To build a structure 481 feet tall out of 2.3 million stone blocks is incredibly difficult today. To do it thousands of years ago, aligning the entire massive footprint perfectly to true north without a compass sounds impossible. It is exactly that kind of perfection that leads people to invent myths about aliens building the Great Pyramid of Giza. But the real story is entirely human. It's a story of pure desperation. Around 5500 BCE, a tiny shift in the Earth's axis pulled the African monsoon rains southward. Over a relatively short period of time, green, lush savannas baked into the dead sand of the Sahara Desert. For the nomadic hunter-gatherers living there, the water simply disappeared. They had to pack up and walk through the dying landscape until they hit a massive, flowing blue line in the sand, the Nile River. This severe climate shift forced a scattered population into a tight geographic bottleneck. They had a stark choice: figure out how to feed everyone in this crowded strip of land, or starve. The problem was that the early Nile was not a gentle, cooperative river. Every year, it became an unpredictable and chaotic force, surging violently and wiping out anything built on its banks. The nomads realized they couldn't fight the water, so they decided to trap the flood. They used stone and wood tools to dig geometric canals and pack mud walls. When the river surged outward, the water rushed into these man-made grids and stayed locked there, even as the main river recedes. This trapped water left behind a thick layer of nutrient-rich black mud. The nomads planted wheat and barley in it, and within a few seasons, they were sitting on towering stockpiles of grain. But massive piles of food sitting in permanent silos attract attention. Starving tribes from the deep desert started raiding these early settlements in the dead of night, burning huts and stealing the grain. To survive the looters, farmers willingly handed over their food and their freedom to the strongest local warlords in exchange for protection. This fear forged the first unified Egyptian state, ruled absolutely by a single leader. These new rulers, the pharaohs, secured their grip by inventing a psychological control system called Ma'at, or cosmic balance. They convinced the population that the pharaoh was a living god who directly controlled the sun and the river. They presented the citizens with a terrifying ultimatum. If the pharaoh's physical body rotted away after death, his spirit would be trapped. The gods would grow angry, the Nile would dry up, and the world would end. To prevent this apocalypse, Egyptian scientists developed mummification. They removed the internal organs, dried the empty husk with specialized salts for 40 days, and wrapped it tight in linen and resin to artificially halt the decay process. But an expertly preserved body was useless if a pack of jackals could dig it out of the sand. They needed a vault that time, weather, and animals couldn't penetrate. The first attempts at these eternal vaults were mud brick benches called mastabas. They failed entirely. Desert winds eroded the mud, and human robbers easily tunneled right through the soft walls to steal the gold inside. To beat the thieves, an engineer named Imhotep swapped mud for heavy stone. He stacked 6 heavy stone mastabas on top of each other to create the step pyramid. It was the first time humans had built an artificial mountain. Decades later, King Sneferu wanted a completely smooth-sided structure. His engineers built it at a steep 54-degree angle, but the math was wrong. The structure's own immense weight caused it to buckle and warp halfway up. Sneferu's engineers learned from the collapse. They recalculated the geometry, lowered the slope, and successfully built the Red Pyramid, the first perfectly smooth-sided pyramid in history. When Pharaoh Khufu took the throne, he wanted a tomb that dwarfed all the others. But his Great Pyramid required giant 50-ton blocks of red granite, and the nearest quarry was 800 kilometers away in Aswan. They solved this logistical nightmare by using the Nile itself. They waited for extreme floodwaters to float the massive stones on heavy ships. Once on land, teams dragged the blocks on sleds, pouring exact amounts of water onto the sand in front of the runners to eliminate friction. The Great Pyramid represents the physical culmination of generations of brutal, iterative trial and error. Yet, the pyramids failed their primary objective. They were brilliant engineering feats, but terrible security vaults. A giant stone mountain in the middle of the desert is a massive signboard telling every looter exactly where the treasure is. Later pharaohs realized this and abandoned pyramid building. Instead, they took their dead deep underground. They carved their tombs into a remote, desolate canyon, now known as the Valley of the Kings. This hiding tactic worked perfectly. While nearly every pyramid was looted in ancient times, one of these hidden underground tombs remained sealed until an archaeologist named Howard Carter cracked it open in 1922. It belonged to King Tutankhamun. Inside that tiny, cramped tomb, Carter found thousands of priceless artifacts and solid gold. The sheer volume of wealth stuffed into King Tut's chamber shows us exactly what ancient looters had successfully stolen from the giant pyramids centuries earlier. We know what a fully loaded tomb looks like. But when we look back at the Great Pyramid of Giza, we find a baffling contradiction. When explorers finally forced their way into the massive interior of Khufu's pyramid, they found it completely sterile. There was no mummy, no gold whatsoever, and not a single carved hieroglyph. While the interior remains sterile, the external geometry presents a different kind of anomaly. Scientists have noted that the layout of the three Giza pyramids maps directly to the Orion constellation, matching the position and scale of the stars in Orion's belt. This digital rendering shows what an international team found in 2015 when they launched the Scan Pyramids project. They used advanced particle physics to look straight through the solid rock, and the scans revealed a massive hidden void right in the center of the structure, isolated from all known corridors. To reach these untouched areas, scientists sent a tiny robotic camera creeping slowly upwards through a deeply hidden 8-inch wide impassable shaft. 200 feet up in the dark, the robot stopped. Its path was blocked by a mysterious stone door fitted with 2 copper pins. When scientists drilled a tiny hole through it, their camera revealed a second, completely unknown door waiting right behind it. A civilization pushed to the brink by climate change hacked the laws of engineering so thoroughly that 4,500 years later, we are still struggling to map the final silent voids of their greatest machine.